Alright, in this section we're going to finish covering up passengers and vehicles. Now, if a passenger is riding in or on a vehicle and it becomes abandoned, the passengers are going to take and automatically disembark and conduct a morale check to determine whether or not they're become shaken, and they'll be marked with a moved marker. So if this stug with its passengers were hit and caused to become abandoned, all of these passengers would disembark. They would all conduct a morale check as normal to see whether or not they would be flipped to their shaken side, and they would all be marked with a move counter. Now, when it comes to passengers, the main thing is mounting and dismounting the vehicle. There's a lot of different rules that are going to apply in different conditions. Make sure you read over that section specifically to understand all the concepts involved with it, but I'm going to take and cover the majority of those concepts here. Now, when you're dismounting a vehicle, it's going to take 1/2 of the movement points of the unit that's loading and the vehicle itself. So, take for example our Sherman tank here. If this squad were loading on top of the Sherman tank, they would spend 1/2 of their movement points, 2, and the tank would spend 1/2 of its movement points, so 5 for the squad to load on top of them. Mounting a vehicle is going to activate that vehicle for the impulse. So if this squad were to mount on top of the Sherman is going to activate and go ahead and conduct its actions for that operations phase. Also, passengers can take and unload any time along a vehicle's movement path as long as the vehicle has the movement point allowance for it. So if this squad were on this tank and it's driving along, they could take and unload into whatever hex as long as the vehicle still had 1/2 its movement points to conduct that offload. Do keep in mind though that passengers can be fired at in the hex that they unload into because they're spending movement points. Now, when it comes to assault movement and assault fire, yeah, you can take and use those types of movements to use 1/2 of your movement point allowance to conduct some type of fire and the other 1/2 to load or unload. There are some restrictions when it comes to that though. A leg unit can't mount a vehicle if the vehicle uses an assault fire and its ordnance. So let's say this Sherman tank here wanted to conduct an assault fire and fire its weapons at these Germans over here, spending 1/2 its movement point allowance, and then use the other 1/2 to load that squad on them. They wouldn't be able to do that if the Sherman fired its ordnance weapon. Now, the leg units can use an assault fire and load. So they could take and fire onto the German units, the squad could, and then spend its remaining 1/2 of its movement point to take and load on top of the vehicle. Also, they can use double time movement point allowance to load or offload. So if this leader were associated with this squad and the squad was receiving the double time 2 movement point bonus there, giving them 6, it would take them 3 to offload or onload